My name is Inner Rhymes. My pronouns are they, them, non binary agender. So, yes, I rap. Uh, where do I go with this from here? So, a little bit of a history in terms of how I got into hip hop. So, I started rapping when I was 13, actually. And I got into this genre of music because surprisingly, it was my mother who introduced me to hip hop. She was really into like ABBA and a bunch of rock bands. And I still remember we got our hands on one of those pirated tapes from back in the day where you don't know what you'd get on them. And she slid into a cassette player. And I think that's when I kind of heard the real Slim Shady for the first time. And I was hooked. And I was like, I mean, my teachers weren't really happy about it though, but it found its way. And I started freestyling when I was 13. And what developed as a private hobby of sorts eventually evolved into this obsession or passion. I don't know where it stops. And yeah, I guess here I am today. So,
Just to add, we have another artist that's supposed to be with us. She's running a little late. She's a theater artist, actor. So whenever she comes, she's just going to join in. But for now, we're just going to have a quick conversation. So do you want to talk about your work that's here at Gender Bender? For those who haven't seen it, or is it going to be a performance?
so my work for Gender Bender, the project, it's this song called Transgression, which is a play on the words trans and aggression, but also transgression. Also coming from a place for the fact that I identify as trans non-binary. Uh, so this track is a trap metal track, if that makes sense. And it's actually part of a much larger project that I've been working on for the past 2 years, which is my debut album. It's called Closeted Thoughts and Painted Nails. So when I initially, conceptualized this album, it underwent a lot of names. I mean, thankfully, I've managed to bring it down to 10 tracks. There are over like around 40 to 60 unreleased songs based on this album alone because it just was a never-ending process. And right now, I think it's mostly done. Just a couple more finishing touches. I have to torture my sound engineers a little bit more. But yeah, so Transgression is a trap metal hip hop track. And I think I'd have to explain what this subgenre actually comprises of. So you have metal, you have trap, which is a subgenre of hip hop, and then you have metal. I know metal has various subgenres, but what makes trap metal different is it shouldn't be confused with screamo rap, where people scream over hip hop beats. Trap metal is mostly like mosh pit kind of energy, aggressive, rebellious, characterized by rebellious lyrics, even as far as going out of pocket with certain things you might say. So, Transgression as a track kind of speaks up on a lot of topics I feel that are relevant in today's queer climate, such as pink washing, rainbow capitalism. It also speaks about how like marginalized communities tend to be targeted in specific whenever it's voting season. Also highlights the lack of representation for people of other gender identities, right, outside of just trans binary individuals. So also the lack of intersectionalism as well. So that is Transgression as a track.
Sure, I'll come back to you with some questions, but since Shradha has joined us, I thought you
Hi.
could introduce yourself.
Hello, friends. I am Shradha Raj. I am a filmmaker now and a theatre artist. I work mainly in the areas of caste, gender, and resistance-based material. This is my first film that I've ever directed or written. Yeah, that's about me.
And is your film playing or is it a screening? Because I haven't been through the exhibition yet. I thought since this is supposed to be an informal session, I would take the opportunity to get to know you guys along with the audience as well. So do you want to talk about that film a little bit and where
Yes.
it's playing? Is it a screening?
For sure. So the film is going to be screened today and tomorrow. It's not an exhibition. It's certainly not a project that is done. It is only begun now, I realize, sitting through the multiple edits and the multiple sound, engineering edits of it all. The film revolves around two Dalit sisters talking about sex and desire. I wanted to explore the idea of two members from a family talking about sex, which is there's so much awkwardness within it because there's a lot of trust when it comes to talking about sex with friends, right? Because you've established safe space, they're outside family, a lot of ties are not there. So I wanted to explore that, but also the idea of sex and desire within the Dalit communities, because a lot of times the idea of purity was so far from us in history that it was quite normal in my dad's village and everyone for them to have like affairs and things like that. So promiscuity was also something that I really wanted to explore. And I think I started off as an actor, but I never saw myself on screen, right? Be it narrative based or the way my body looked, there was such a lack of representation, even like on the basic front. So when I wrote the film, I was like, I'm gonna act in it. That's right. And then I was like, oh shit, I can't do both things. Because it just requires that much detailing that has to be, overseen as a director when the shot is being taken. And I was like, no, that's not it. So I had to find people, for a lack of better terms, who look like me, who look like my sister, who look like my mom, who carry that kind of representation. That was another layer of, a hurdle that I had to cross. Because I waited for like 3 weeks to find someone from the community, and then just wasn't there. Like even in terms of technical support, I was like, I want a female Dalit AD, and then no one.
So was that important to you to sort of get mostly queer individuals, queer folk to work on the film as well?
Yes, that was very much important. Queer folks from the community. When I also mean from the Dalit community. So yeah, thankfully there was some representation. Although I would have loved for a lot more representation, even on the technical front, which is why there's so much of the process that is still left to be done. So I was just like, it's okay. For this screening, we can wait.
And is this your first film that you've directed?
Mm-hmm. It's the first film I've ever written. The last time I wrote was like 2-3 years ago, and then I was just like, I'm very afraid of writing, which is, I think a lot of us are very afraid of the blank page. So I was like, I'll just apply, we'll see. If the grant comes, I'll write. I was like, I'm not going to get the grant, no, it's okay. And then I got it, I was like, oh shit. So yeah, this is my first time directing and writing.
So, Inner, would you like to briefly talk about your collective 1.5? And you also talked a lot about the cypher culture, working with or collaborating with other rappers, hip hop artists, breakdancers in Bangalore. Could you just sort of give us a brief look into how that scene works in Bangalore?
So I'm one of the co-founders of this hip hop collective known as 1.5. And for those of you who might not get it, when we so 1.5 was co-founded by me, Pasha Bhai, the first Dakni rapper out there, by the way. You should check out his stuff. He's absolute heat. We have Pasha Bhai, we have Karim Pucha, who is a videographer. We have AKX and Agai Rahi. So all under the guidance of Smokey the Ghost, who is actually a Bangalore hip hop veteran from the crew called Machas with Attitude. And like when we came together to form 1.5, before we even coined the name, we were like, okay, Mumbai has the gullies, they have the gully boys. I don't know what Delhi has Spit Dope Inc. Also Mumbai has a great battle rap league called Battle Bars Bombay B3. And we were like, what represents us in its most literal essence? And then we just looked at a bunch of auto drivers who were like, yeah, 1.5 for sure, right? And I mean, we have a love and hate relationship with our auto drivers here. If you know, you know. And so actually you have to understand that before 1.5 in Bangalore, and I'm purely speaking for Bangalore, of course, hip hop culture was kind of gatekept by school and college fests, or you had to go and pay for an open mic to perform. 1.5, when we came together, we were like, we're going to take power back from the venues, right? We're not going to let them take our culture or what we deem as Desi hip hop, right? This is our realm and nobody else is going to take it. So we started hosting ciphers in public spaces where anybody and anyone can come, like Cubbon Park, or for example, like Church Street, or where the graffiti is, sorry, MG Road, right, around there where there's like that whole graffiti wall near the metro, over there as well. And the whole point was we also realized that, it was a challenge at first because we're like, most people are, at that particular time at least, assume that you'd either have to, pay a lot to attend a hip hop gig. And most people who generally really wanted to participate in rap or like hip hop would feel very intimidated, right? Like, okay, we can't afford to be in these spaces. And there's a certain classism that comes when you attend like certain hip hop gigs in that particular era. And so One and a Half was born. And it includes a variety of not just rappers, it's also breakdancers, graffiti artists, all for like elements of hip hop. So that was one of our core components when we came together. And also we, in terms of getting music out, right? One of the biggest hurdles I think most artists, musicians in general right now face is putting out their music on streaming platforms. And it can be a very complicated mess for a variety of people, especially since you have to pay a fee every year, along with the fee possibly to keep your tracks up. So what One and a Half does is we distribute their tracks absolutely for free without any repercussions for them to face, barring like a little bit of a royalty split involved, right? And in terms of collaborating, are you referring to my idea of collaborating in the scene, or how hip hop, or what facet would you like me to emphasize on?
Or in some ways, the way that you work with, or rap with, or sing with other hip hop artists in Bangalore.
Well, to be very frank, if I had to speak on this topic, right? When I formed One and a Half, I was very much in the closet at the time, right? And I can tell you for a fact, ever since I've come out, a lot has shifted. We'll just put it in that manner, right? How do I phrase this? When you are queer and you rap, it's also kind of ironic as well, because hip hop is a very masculine genre of music, right? And that in itself is kind of ironic. And in terms of my idea of collaborating after I came out, I haven't really collaborated with anybody in the scene, barring the previous grantee, who Shazor, right? Catboy Juicelin, like they're the only queer artists on my album. So,
okay, interesting. So two things I wanted to actually mention here is that earlier you mentioned how you wanted to break away from these events that were happening at colleges and schools. It was primarily focused within these kind of atmospheres, and how you kind of started performing on the street. And when you look at sort of rap, really, it was a street movement. It was a cultural movement that broke away from sort of the house parties, the hip hop culture in the US. So was that like a conscious decision? Was that like the history of like how hip hop or rap came to be? Was that sort of part of why you guys also wanted to just sort of come out onto the streets and perform more and involve people out in public?
definitely 100%, because you have to understand that hip hop is technically street poetry, right? And at the same time, hip hop is also that's why if you've noticed, like, there are no two rappers that are the same, unless you actually jack someone's sound. But generally speaking, there are no two rappers who sound the same. You might find somebody who would sound similar, but not really the same. Like, and hip hop is a genre of music whose experience is really malleable in nature, if that makes sense, based from where you come from. Like, take one of the co-founders of One and a Half, Pasha Bhai. He's a Dakkani rapper, and he primarily raps about his life in Neelasandra, as well as around Shivaji Nagar. And his music videos really capture that cultural essence, right? Whereas opposed to someone who, comes from, let's say, like my music, for example, like my current music right now, which is queer hip hop, that's the subgenre I fall into. My sound is very different from his, drastically very different. Like and hip hop is also defined by slang. That's another topic I'd like to also hit up on, right? Like, for example, like in my music, I'd probably say the word dyke or something, like, and just like sprinkle it with my own slang that I've picked up since coming out. Whereas Pasha Bhai will have his own slang in his music video that is very relevant to his people, right? So yes, and the whole point of us breaking away from these venues was to establish a culture that is very diverse and versatile, right? Especially if we speak about the Bangalore scene, like you have Kannada rappers, you have Telugu rappers, you have English rappers, heck, we even have French rappers, like. And the only time this unity ever came, and if I might toot my community's horn, is when One and a Half came into existence. So, yeah.
Yeah, you also mentioned that rap in some ways as a genre, as a hip hop genre, is masculine in nature, and it really is. If you look at the history of hip hop and rap and the artists that have come through, they're very masculine. Their sexualities are almost always, heterosexual. But to me, rap, hip hop is really more about political aggression, right? So that's what interests me about your work and you being a queer hip hop artist, because being queer is political. So like that genre really fits into the kind of stories or that you want to tell within your music, right? So do you want to just sort of touch upon that as well?
So in terms of your opinion, yes, I agree wholeheartedly. Hip hop is political, but we also have to understand that hip hop as a genre has evolved so much over the years, right? It's not even just political at this point. Now you have like so many subgenres. Like hip hop is just an umbrella term at this point for that hosts a variety of subgenres underneath it. So at least if I can speak for myself, yes, definitely my music is political. My existence is political, right? And that's what Closeted Thoughts and Painted Nails aims to target. It's a mental health, political, queer hip hop album, to be exact, right? And I've even gone as far as, so this album started when I actually came out. The day I came out, I was like, you know what? It started as a personal thing. It was never supposed to come out. And then I just like popped it over to one of my producers who's like a close friend of mine, probably one of the few producers who haven't ditched me since I've come out, by the way. And he was like, yo, this is kind of fire. Yeah, you gotta finish this. And one thing led to another, and eventually I was like, okay, I think I'm making an album. And, like also bring a lot of things to life. I'm actually sampling my actual recorded therapy sessions as interludes for my album at 3 different segments where I discuss gender dysphoria from the Indian context, also specifically from a non-binary perspective, as someone who's actually gone through gender dysphoria, still do actually, but it is what it is, I suppose. But yeah, and also like the album's divided into 3 segments, to be exact. The first 3 tracks are mostly to do with introspection. Like, spoiler alert, the first track is called The Birth, where I rap from the perspective of a baby in the mother's womb while using plant metaphors, right? And it progresses. Then the next half is where transgression falls in. There's Transgression, which is the trap metal track. The second one is called Kannu, featuring Shezor. So Kannu in Kannada Malayalam probably means like eyes or sight. But I flipped the meaning to Nazar, right? The evil eye or the bad eye. And that whole track is basically Shezor and I going back and forth about the kind of looks we get based on when you're visibly queer, like are we being fetishized? Is someone planning to kill us? Is someone undressing us with their eyes? We're trying to highlight that perspective. And the third track is called Law and Order, where we kind of shit on the law system, but like it is what it is. Especially the Marriage Act. But yeah, so yeah, and should I finish the last bit? I hope I'm not consuming too much time. So the last, then there's like the last 4 tracks, right? Now see, introspection, aggression, and rebellion. And now comes the more like emotional side of things. So if you all have known me before coming out, I fell into a genre called emo trap, right? Which is like emo rap, basically, subgenre, like, or whatever. But yeah, so the last 4 tracks are, there's a track called Unsent Letters, where I openly come out to my parents in this track, right? Like it's one to my mom, one to my dad, so. And then there is called, after that comes To You and Only You, which was like to the first queer relationship I had. And how this person actually housed me like when I was going through a lot at home for coming out openly. And this person was there, it was like a former partner. And then the next track after that is called Inner Child, right? Where I actually have like this empathetic conversation with my younger self and actually acknowledge what they've gone through. And, telling them like, I understand this, you hate being him, but we came a long way as them. And that's where it goes. And the last track is just mostly called Closeted Thoughts, where it's kind of like, I don't know if y'all listen to Kendrick Lamar, but I got really inspired by Mother I Sober. And it's basically just a piano track where I'm just mulling over what everything has been and the fear of what's to come, while basking in my glory in the present, of course. So that's basically the album.
And what about your rapping style? You mentioned Slim Shady, so I'm assuming you're really interested in storytelling rap. Are you interested in spoken word? I don't know. Speak about it.
I mean, like I initially started out as a spoken word poet, but like, along the way I got really like into hip hop. Like I just became like an unhealthy addiction. And in terms of sound, so I dabble around a lot of subgenres. If that's the best way I can put it across. So storytelling is one aspect, primarily over like boom bap or lo-fi beats. But when it comes to like the more like aggressive sound, I go for like funk, Memphis funk beats, as well as trap metal, or anything with a lot of cowbells. Really, if I'm being honest. So yeah.
Shraddha, you wrote in your bio about the lack of female filmmakers, especially in Karnataka, which, especially within independent filmmaking, and I completely agree with you because I also program. One of my side jobs is programming for film festivals, and if you look at the independent film scene, in India and Karnataka, you see Natish Hegde, Sumant Bhatt, the guy who made Shivamma, Ire Gowda, Ram Reddy, all these boys, men. The only sort of from South India, like I can think of Shailaja, who's making sort of queer work as a female filmmaker. Do you want to sort of touch upon that? And was that also your interest in sort of directing the film rather than just acting?
Yes, it was very much a, a point that I wanted to touch upon. It is also coming from a space of you require privilege to be like a filmmaker, but you require privilege to be a female filmmaker. You require privilege to be a Dalit female privilege. Like there are many levels to this, and even in your storytelling, specifically in Kannada, a lot of your Kannada is Brahmanized Kannada. So, like when we're talking about films, there is a level of de-Brahmanization that has to be done because I grew up listening to a texture of Kannada that I didn't see in films, and so when you talk about sex, sexuality, and desire, you either move into Brahmanized Kannada, or you move into like like you know very crass sounding Kannada, which is what I grew up with, right? It was very normalized. If I grew up at home, it was censor alert, tika maka, all of that sort of Kannada.
ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಬೆಳೆದಿದ್ದು ನೀವು
Bengaluru
ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಲ್ಲೇನಾ?
because Appa grew up in Tumkur and he came, so Halli Kannada. And Amma grew up in Srirampura, so Srirampura Kannada, which is like a mixture of like Dakhni and things like that. So I grew up in RT Nagar. So for the longest time, when my mother thought she was speaking Hindi, she was speaking Dakhni. So everyone who came home would be like, "Madam, I can't understand what is it. Tujhe malum nahi," like that. So even in like 2 years ago, I was part of another gender bender project, which was by Rashmi. She's here, which was also revolving around Kannada and sexuality. And when you talk about it, it's Brahmanized Kannada, and even in the indie film space. There are very few female directors that I know obviously they write the Kannada they know, which is also Brahmanized Kannada. So there's a huge lack of representation that happens over like many layers, which I would really wanted to tackle in my film, and also stay true to my story and the story of like my ancestors. So a part of my film is this. There's a bit of Hiriyar Habba that happens, and it is one of the biggest festivals we celebrate in our house. But it is also a festival that doesn't include God. It is about honoring your ancestors. So, like, the things that we celebrate are not very holy. And I just wanted to really show you just how much we love this festival. So, like, in the festival, we give everything that our ancestors like. So, this year we put pedigree because I lost my dog last year. And then we put Parle G. And then there is OMR packet. And there is one packet of BD. These are not things that you would find in like Brahmanicized spaces, right? So our form of quote unquote worship is very different from
Worshipping gods.
Yeah.
So is that what you meant when you said the rituals that you capture within the film is not around worshipping gods? It's around all of this.
Yeah. It's about like we ask permissions also. So we lay out all their favorite food, which is chicken, mutton, and Parle G. And then we go out of the house and we give them privacy to eat. And then we knock and we say, "Can we come in?" And then we come in and then we eat the food.
Wait, them being?
Our ancestors.
Ah, okay,
their
sure.
spirits.
Right.
and then we eat the food that they left behind, and there is this oh ಇವತ್ತು ಊಟ ಸಪ್ಪೆ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅವ್ರು ಬಂದು ತಿಂದೋಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. So these
ಖಾಲಿ ಆಗಿದೆ, ನಾಯಿ ಬಂದು ತಿಂದೋಗಿದೆ.
ಹೌದು. So we say that we eat the food that they left behind, the hede, which is the offering, and then when we eat it, it's obviously gone a little. The salt has reduced because it's been out in the open for so long. There is logic to it, okay, but then we'll eat it and we're like, oh, they came. It's lost a little bit of its taste because they ate and they went. Now we know, like those sort of. It's very endearing. I really. There's a lot of pain in our ancestry, that's for sure, but I also wanted to show you celebration in my ancestry, which is very decentralized, which is very de-Brahmanical, which doesn't revolve around purity. The language is also such that it does not revolve around purity. And look, it's crass. The Kannada we speak is crass, which means that it needs to be updated, right? A lot of words, but the only way we're going to do it is by using these words, having discussions about these words. You can't skip a step and be like, let's find politically correct words without ever addressing these things. So I think that was a huge part of writing it and then having it undergo that many edits and then showing it to a bunch of people. Be like, do you think it is worth filming? Please tell me. Like that.
So I haven't seen your film yet, but I'm going to. You mentioned your two protagonists are two women, right? Are they queer? If they don't have to be, I'm just asking if they are.
The
in
characters
the film?
aren't.
The characters? Okay.
But one of the actors were.
Okay. So I guess my question to you is like, how important is this intersectionality of gender and sexuality and even caste? Because you're dealing with all these subjects in some ways in your film.
It's very, very, very important. When I was writing it, I was very aware of the conversations that I've had in my family, which is because we come from a space of like really being open to, like I'm the first generation privileged Dalit, member of the family. I'm the first generation educated, a degree holder. So these are important conversations I have to break within my family, sensitizing them to fluidity and gender identities, and a lot of times they're not received well, right? But that is the uncomfortable truth that I have to deal with as a privileged person, as someone who's been educated, which is what I also write in the film. Granted, I don't touch upon a lot of important things. Again, there are levels to how much I can write and how much I wish to write as well, because this is my first film. Because there is a bit where the sister is undergoing a breakup with her husband because he cheated on her, and he isn't even openly telling her that he's cheated on her. And then the younger sister is like, people can sleep with people outside marriage, and then they're talking about the idea of monogamy and polyamory, right? Granted, the timing sucked when the sister brings it up. But these are conversations that happen in the film. And whether I failed or not, I tried.
I have a question for you. So when you think of rap, hip hop, it's so rooted in America's African-American sort of history in some ways. So is it fair to question this Western import into a country like India or in South Asia? What are your thoughts on that, and sort of a movement being, getting emerged here, and artists being, made here?
Like, how do I phrase this? I think there's a difference when you appropriate a culture and pay homage to a culture, if that makes sense. Like, for example, like I'm a brown-skinned person rapping. I'm definitely not going to say the N-word in a track. That is appropriation. That is also disregarding the roots of the culture. But if I were to see a brown person using the N-word, that's appropriation. Even if, no matter how skilled they are as a rapper, that does not grant you the pass, right? And also the way you talk, the way you speak, right? Of course, it's a different thing if you've come from said place and been around, a particular group of people. It's only naturally going to pick up the way they speak or the way they carry themselves. But it's a different story if you're emulating a certain set of behavioral traits or the way people speak. Then that's where you draw the line, And I mean, definitely, like in terms of Indian hip hop, like a lot of people did start out like that. Like the way a culture evolves into a subculture is when you start by aping the start, right? I mean, I remember when I was young and I started freestyling. I spoke about like toting a pistol and stuff. I was a gangster rap and 50 Cent. So oh, definitely not. I was a 13-year-old. I mean, after like freestyling about gangsters and stuff, I'd go and play Pokemon. Like, I mean, sweetie, nah. So it was like pretty out of pocket. But I think only in terms of, I think also the whole idea of why I love hip hop is, the older you get, rather the more you grow, rather, right? And if you are a hip hop artist, your art is severely like affected by the kind of lifestyle you're leading. Like sometimes I find it a little hard to believe that 2 years ago I was making emo rap, right? And whatever I'm making now is just such a stark difference from that. Like it's like boom.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on Gully Boy, the film? I think that answers the question. But you can answer it.
All right. If I ever saw Gully Boy,
Oh, you haven't seen
and if Gully Boy would take on the form of a physical entity, and we were near a volcano, or kick them in their shin so hard, and giggle like the Mad Hatter. But to give you all a more concrete answer, right? So, as someone who's been rapping before the Gully arc, as I'd like to call it, came into existence, what I really loved about the underground Indian hip hop scene was so give you a little bit of history, right? So Indian hip hop originated in this social media website called Orkut.
Oh, I remember it.
It started out with Orkut and it evolved into Facebook. And I mean, I was part of the Facebook arc. I mean, I was pretty. So basically, on Orkut, there was a rich battle rap culture where people would battle rap in comments. And yeah, I'm serious. And that's where like Machas with Attitude, I think from what my memory serves right, Smokey the Ghost and Brother V actually came out from the awkward battle hip hop days, right? And when that transition happened, right, there was Facebook. I remember being part of like a couple of battle rap groups, and it was pretty intense. You'd have people actually like make tournament maps and stuff and like post it in the group and be like, and we had really funky names back then, man. There was like there was this artist called like, I think it was called like Lil Ringtone or something. No, but his bars are really good if I be sincere. But yeah, so that's where it actually started. And what I really liked was how Bangalore, Mumbai, and Delhi, before Gully Boy came into existence, had their own distinct sound, if that makes sense. Like Bangalore was filled with a bunch of like lo-fi rappers, if that makes sense. Like just like our weather. And Mumbai had like a lot of the both hard motherfuckers. I mean, sorry,
It's okay, it's not censored.
MFs, right? And then you had like the Delhi stereotype rappers. No offense, but when Gully Boy came in, everybody wanted to be a Gully Boy. If I had a penny for seeing like a bunch of people putting up photos with their MacBook saying just another Gully Boy trying to make it, I would be stinking rich. And the problem I feel with Gully Boy is, as a movie, it has had an impact. There is no denying it. While it has made hip hop more accessible to Indians or to the Indian audience, at the same time, I feel like the creativity of the underground took a back seat, right? Because it seemed like if you mimic this particular sound, this is what Indian hip hop is. And many people will be surprised. I mean, for crying out loud, our first Indian rapper's name is Baba Segal. He was the first Indian rapper, and nobody brings him up. I mean, although he was a bit of a parody of, Ice, Vanilla Ice, but because Ice Ice Baby, and his song was called Tanda Tanda Pani. So, I mean, and then came Honey Singh, and it's like this, Gully Boys just kind of like erased the history a bit in my eyes, if I'll be honest.
You're referring to Indian hip hop sounds. Would you say there was a distinctive sound to Indian hip hop or a style? I'm curious.
Like in my opinion, like that's what I love about Indian hip hop is how your geographic location or your state or whatever represents your sound, right? Like for example, like take Punjabi hip hop, Bohemia, and so forth. Like they have their own particular sound, and then you take Malayali rappers, like let's say like Tirumali, right? They have their own particular sound that's very distinct to their culture. right? Or if you take even like, like also what really surprises me is also how like while we talk about Indian hip hop so much, we look at the north and the south, but we forget to understand that there's the northeast, right? Kasi Bloods, for example. Like my introduction to Indian hip hop was not even the north or the south. It was this group called Kasi Bloods, right, from Meghalaya, and I was like so like my mind was blown apart, right? Because this is my first time seeing a bunch of people rapping in English in the Indian context, right? So I feel like it's very diverse, right? Uh, yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Last question to you, Shradha. Since I asked in a pop cultural question, what would you say you have any favorite female Indian filmmakers working at the moment? If not, that's okay too. No, nobody.
No. But also, I think my intake of films is very little. At least Indian films, because right now what I'm doing is really digging into my Kannada roots and who are there. Like there's just very few that I can. Enema, sorry. Ananya Kasarwalli. And with them, she makes very beautiful films. I think there's another indie film that I'm not sure of. But I don't. I think I look at it from a sense of if I can relate to it, and I've never been able to. Um, so yeah, I that was a big part of why I made the film in the first place, and it's still not done. I'm very aware there's a lot of craft that has to come into my filmmaking and everything, but I'm very happy to have some sort of document of female Dalit sexuality and things like that. Because when I grew up listening to these stories, there was a blanket that was missing, like a purity blanket. I would just be like, "Huh, Mate Ajji, where would she go? Do you think she had an affair?" Because she wasn't there yeah, before when I was born. Because it's so common for
To speculate about our ajis.
yeah, yeah. I think it's also because there's a lot of pain involved in these stories that there has to be some form of love that you reach out to, and I've heard this about so many of my ajis, dude. And there's been like these stories of how babies have been formed before marriage and things like that. So the idea of like cheating, promiscuity is very common, but they just never talk about it. And because there was this one story where, because my grandfather was one of the first people to come to Bangalore from my mom's side, he would be like, everyone can come home and stay in my house if you're studying. And then there was a sudden pregnancy that happened because of this phenomenon. So premarital sex was always there, but you'd just be like, okay, under the bed you go. So yeah, and when you talk about it, you don't talk about it. ಅವಳು ಬೇರೆ ಒಬ್ಬ ಗಂಡಸನ ಜೊತೆ ಮಲಗಿದಳು. No, the kind of Kannada we use is very different, and I don't see these. I don't see this sort of Kannada even when you, as an actor, when you read script, it is also very Brahmanicized Kannada, right? And most of the team were also from the Dalit community. So they read the script and they were like, bro, my mom talks like this. My mom thinks the same way. And I was just like, yeah, it's very nice to have that kind of community. And I think this is the first time we've hit upon community in like the filmmaking realm. I've hit upon a jackpot of a community in my theater world. But even in the film sense, I think even we were realizing just how much of a void there is. So yeah.
I think that's it from my side. If anybody has questions from the audience,
One word that sort of stayed with me was kannu. When you were, yeah, and in Kannada we also say kannakodu. And this question is for the both of you actually, with the filmmaking and the rapping. I believe that the stronger the artistic voice gets, the more open and also vulnerable we are to the public gaze. I mean, after I created Amma Maklelinda Bartave, which was an anthology of women's sexuality that Shradha also was a part of, of course, there was conversations that opened up, but there was also people on our Facebook page thinking we were a virtual sex page and sending messages saying, send Bobs and Vijay's. Uh, so
I was a
my
social media manager. I
Yeah.
can attest. Yes.
yeah.
Damn.
So my question to both of you is, what have been the textures of gaze on your work, the stronger the voice has gotten, be it in filmmaking or rapping?
Do you want to go first?
You want to go first?
Rock, paper, scissors.
Yes.
Paper, scissors. Ha!
Ah, you win.
Oh no. Well,
You win. You get to decide who goes first.
all right, I'll go first.
Yeah.
Alright. So, in response to like Kannu, right? And you're referring to, could you like rephrase that a bit? I'm not sure if I comprehended it properly, but did you mention ever since your voice or your presence as who you are as an artist has become stronger, has that shifted the landscape of how people view you?
Yeah.
Oh,
And-
oh, sorry, continue.
Yeah.
No, 100%. Because I remember when I came out, right, I had like a team of producers, right? And I'm talking about like not exactly a team, but a bunch of people I would work with, right? As well as, collaborations with other artists in the scene. But when I came out, let's say that number has reduced to like almost negligible, right? This whole album is made by people who actually understand queerness. They're like allies, and even the people who mix and master my music now, these are the only people who've stuck with me. So, and the louder it's gotten, the more I've seen people, at least within the scene in my eyes, barring of course a few exceptions, kind of like stray away from me as an artist. It's crazy because like it's kind of crazy because if I had to toot my horn, I know I'm a phenomenal freestyler, right? But no matter how skilled I am as an artist, I know my identity is playing a big role in me not getting what I deserve, right? Even though I'm way more skilled than a bunch of these said people who've strayed away from me, right? So the louder it gets at this point, I'm just like clapping back, I guess, And you have to also understand, while people might be like artists within the scene might say like, yes, queer hip hop, let's go. How many of these artists are going to place a queer artist on their track, right? It's like the pie gets smaller and smaller till you're just like scraping at the crumb, right? So yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword because while I think found a lot more love in the community, in one community, I think in the other community, I just feel a little isolated, if that makes sense. So yeah, I guess it's got its perks, I guess. But they can't snatch my pride though, so let's go.
Yes, it has changed the way I'm viewed in the theatre making landscape, in the filmmaking landscape. I think ever since I did Amma Makkalu Ellinda Bartave, Amma Makkalu Ellinda Bartave. Mommy, where do kids come from? I think I've had a lot of. Oh, so you talk about sex? Do you want to do this? Oh, so you're and most times I also get categorized as a very angry Dalit filmmaker or an actor, so I lose out on a lot of opportunities because let's face it, a lot of the scripts in the mainstream talk about the marginalized community. They talk about the marginalized arc of overcoming problems. You look at Arjun Reddy, not Arjun Reddy, God, Jesus Christ, no. Yeah, right. All of it has a sense of marginalized angle to it, but there are no marginalized people writing these scripts. There are no marginalized people, at all. But look at the country. How many of us fall into the marginalized category? A lot, right? So there are times when I've been in rehearsals because I know I'm a good actor, I know I'm a good dramaturg, that I will look at a script and say, this is a marginalized identity. How are we planning to address it in the process, and how are we planning to address it in the story itself? And I've gotten kicked out of rehearsal rooms, right? Um, so it becomes a responsibility for us to create these safe spaces for these stories on paper and in rooms itself. And when you do that, there are a lot of again parts of the pie that crumble away.
The representation around marginalized communities or people is really tokenized.
Exactly. which is I think louder I get, the angrier I sound. So a lot of people will get afraid of that anger, and then a lot of people will get attracted to the anger and be like, "Hey, Dalit female, you want to write for us or what?" Like that. So you get categorized. But that is also, there's so much more to the identity. There's so much more joy. There's celebration and everything to it.
May I?
Yes, you may.
I do have a question for you though. So I wanted to ask your opinion on the you being a Dalit woman, right? Your opinion on the Made in Heaven scenario with Yashika Dutt, right? Like it's this whole thing that everybody wants a Dalit story till it's crediting a Dalit. What is your stance on the? What do you feel about this? How do it make you feel being someone in this field?
I've heard a lot of it about it, but I haven't watched it. But what I'm happy to finally have like a Dalit narrative out there. But what I'm not happy about is not having a like a Dalit woman represent a Dalit identity, and not having credits for someone whose life it is about. Um, Again, this is what I mean. There are Dalit stories out there, and there are no basic thing that you can do is credit someone for the work that they've done. So
Just want to say a shout out to the person who directed my video. His name is Mahesh. He runs an organization called Neela Varna. So just letting you all know, if any of y'all are know somebody, or if you're like a queer artist from a marginalized community or scheduled caste or tribe, please reach out to Neela Varna, especially if you rap or sing in in Kannada or any like regional language. Please reach out to Neela Varna. Yeah,
yay.
that's about it. Skirt.
Yay! Oh, I also wanted to really credit my editor and DOP. It's because of him that I don't know film jargon as much, and I don't know film editing process. And then he was like, "Okay, Shradha, what do you want to do?" I was like, "What? I don't know these things." And he was like, "Okay, so this is it. A lot of times he'd be like, "Hey, we have to do this today. Can you come? Can you hello?" So yeah, again, Neela Varna and Shrungar. If you need a film for DOP.
Gang.
Yay!